Hi, my name is Eduardo Ox. I'm the author of an obscure Emacs package called EV, and I think that it's better to start this presentation by the middle of the story, by this word here, Maxima. Maxima is a computer algebra system that has several interfaces. One of them is WX Maxima that looks very modern and it's very pretty. And it looks like this. It's a cell-based interface. We can type an expression here and execute it. Here's the result. But I don't like that interface because my memory is very bad. I type very slowly and with lots of mistakes. So for me, this ugly interface that I'm going to show now is much better. And here I'm going to show how I am teaching that ugly interface to beginners. If I type F8 on these three lines here, it creates a Maxima running inside the Emacs. I mean, using a terminal and running inside the shell buffer in Emacs. And if I type F8 on these other lines here, the F8s send lines to Maxima, and ta-da, this small program drew this. I live in Brazil, and people in developed countries cannot imagine how are the beginners that we have here. In a sense, Brazil is another planet. Let me explain why. And also let me explain why Maxima, why Emacs? Because people always say, you should use programs that everyone finds intuitive, like VS Code. Well, I teach calculus in a bad campus of a good federal university in Brazil. My university is called UF, for Universidade Federal Fluminense. The main campus of UF is in Niterói. That's a big city near Rio de Janeiro. And I work in a city called Rio das Ostras, that is a small city 200 kilometers away from Rio de Janeiro. I started working there in 2009. My campus gets very little funding. That's a long story that I don't have time to tell now. And we get the students that don't get enough marks in the admission process to get to better places. Also, my campus has two institutes. I call them the Institute of Humanities and the Institute of Inhumanities. Each of our institutes has a small building. The Humanities building has lots of plants and lots of graffitis. I call it the good building. And the Inhumanities building has lots of rules and prohibitions. I call it the evil building. I heard that the Inhumanities building has a laboratory with computers and that it doesn't have any machine that runs Linux. But the Inhumanities building is shrouded in mystery and basically humans avoid it. Only inhumans go there. I only discovered how much another planet Brazil is a few months ago. In May and June of this year, the federal universities in Brazil paralyzed their activities in a nationwide strike for 2 months. And during the strike, the humanities students occupied the humanities building and organized lots of activities there. They asked me if I could give some workshops, and I offered 2 hands-on workshops on free software for beginners, basically on Emacs and EV, with tutorials, with lots of try it. And as usual, the students of computer science and engineering ignored the workshop completely and didn't come. But some students of psychology and of produção cultural, which is basically techniques for producing cultural activities, came to my workshop. And they loved the workshop. They found it fun. And after the workshop, I told the students that there are lots of things that, between quotes, everyone knows, and I don't, and I would like to learn them, but I find them too hard to learn by myself because I'm a dinosaur. I'm only used to interfaces that are very old and that are not graphical. And one of the examples of the things that I would like to learn is Canva. And then the student of Produção Cultural taught me Canva in 10 minutes. And that changed my life. So, the student of Produção Cultural taught me Canva in 10 minutes, and that changed my life. Anyway, again, I'm working in that place, Hilda's Oysters, since 2009. And the computer science students here know lots of programs and language that I would like to learn. But in all these 15 years, the computer science students only helped me twice. It turns out that our in-humanities students don't have a culture of sharing and helping, but our humanities students do. Another detail about how much Brazil is another planet, well, I only discovered this very recently too. My research is in logic. I sometimes go to conferences, usually in Brazil, very rarely outside, and people here don't bring their laptops to the conferences. We don't have a culture of sitting together with friends or colleagues to learn with them how to use the programs that they use. For example, many of my friends are logicians who have to draw lots of diagrams, and I don't know how they use their programs to draw diagrams. I don't know how things are in universities with good computer labs. But anyway, consider these sentences that sort of everybody says. Everyone knows VS Code, everyone knows Jupyter Notebooks, everyone draws diagrams with Quiver. Here, these things are not true, they are not relevant. Here, knowledge about programs do not propagate. And one of my goals in life is to become friends with some people who know how to use, for example, code blocks in org and JavaScript, and learn some of their workflows. Or rather, one of my goals is to become someone who deserves help. More on Maxima for students. Remember, our in-humanities students don't have a culture of sharing and helping, but our humanities students do. I've been telling my students, I teach Calculus 2 and 3 here, that they will learn much faster if they learn Maxima, and that people who learn Maxima can take an optional test and earn extra marks in the course. But if they behave as typical in-humanities students, I mean, not asking questions and not helping their colleagues, then I won't help them. Actually, it's even worse. I've told my students that my documentation is not good enough yet, and every question helps me a lot, so please ask questions, and I've begged on my knees. And now I can treat students who don't ask questions as people who won't help someone that they know who is begging on his knees. Now let me explain another word of the title of this presentation. The title of this presentation is Emacs EV and Maxima Now. The now in the title means in less than 1 hour, and even for people who have never seen a terminal in their lives. Well, my title is a slight exaggeration. It only took less than 1 hour for one person, who is a school kid from a small city in the north of Brazil, who didn't know anything about programming, but who was competing in the local math Olympiads, so not a typical person. Now let me tell a story based on real events and based on a real student. The student said, I have Linux on my laptop, can you help me to do blah 1? I answered, sure, do blah 2 and blah 3. This was all by chat. I don't remember if by WhatsApp or by Telegram. Then 1 week passes and the student talks to me again, and the student says, it doesn't work. And I answer, what happens when you do blah 4 and blah 5? Another week passes. Then the student reappears and he says, it doesn't work. And I answer, type blah 6 and blah 7 in the terminal, press enter, take a photo of your screen, remember, not a screenshot, a photo of your screen, and send it to me. Then the student disappears again, another week passes, and the student reappears and says, how do I open a terminal? Well, then, plonk. According to the jargon file, plonk is the sound that a newbie makes as he falls to the bottom of a kill file. I prefer this simple definition here. For me, plonk is the sound that the person makes when he, she, or they hits the bottom of my list of priorities. I've been using this slogan with my students. It sounds much better in Portuguese, sorry. I am not a telepath, and for me it is 100 times harder to discover the doubts of people who don't talk to me than to discover the doubts of people who do talk to me. There's an interesting thing here in this presentation by Abelson and Sussman. Let me explain now this word of my title, Emacs. And the idea is that learning Emacs can mean many things, learning Lisp can mean many things. And in this presentation, oh no, one second. Sorry, back. In this presentation, they say anyone can learn Lisp in one day, except that if they already know Fortran, then it will take 3 days. And I would add, and if the person is starting with Doom Emacs, then it would take 5 years. Why? Because the person is using a different notion of Emacs and a different notion of Lisp. The person is starting by spending 5 years learning how to configure Emacs, and the person is using Lisp as a very weird configuration language. Usually the people who start by Doom Emacs, they start by configuring Emacs, and only then they learn things like defun, etc. And another slogan that I use a lot with my students is that there are many cases in which learning just the thing B takes 200 hours, but learning A and then B takes just 20 hours. Here are some kinds of beginners that I do not want to help. First example, a person who says, I can't read that page, it has too many links. Second example, a person who says, I don't want to read anything and I don't want to learn anything. I want something that just works. And third example, I don't want to look at examples. You need to summarize everything to me in one paragraph. There are more explanations on these kinds of beginners at my page about this presentation here. And here is one kind of beginner that I really want to help. Beginners that are nerdy kids who are used to reading materials that are too advanced for them, understanding only a few % of what they read, remembering just a tiny fraction of what they read, going back to these materials later and taking notes about what they read. And who are also always interested in experimenting with new ways of taking notes, transcribing, summarizing, and saving links to primary sources. I'd like to say something about how I've been plonking the paragraph people, who are the people who say, I don't want to look at examples, you need to summarize everything to me in one paragraph. Well, I'm a mathematician. I work with lots of things that can only be summarized in a paragraph if we choose the level of who we are talking to. So we have many different one paragraph summaries, one for each level. And in many cases, this sentence, you need to summarize it in one paragraph, is wrong. The person means, I want to learn a lot in 10 minutes, and this needs diagrams, animations, and examples. This is an example of something in mathematics, in category theory, that I only understood after too many times, after zillions of years. It's called the Yoneda lemma. This is the general case, just this small thing here. But I only understood it after understanding many particular cases and then organizing them in a way in which different figures had different shapes and whatever. And the textual explanations for the dilemma, the one paragraph explanations or the many paragraph explanations never helped me much. And they contained formulas in mathematics, but written linearly, that had too many symbols, and my mental buffer is very small. And I had to find several tricks to reduce the cognitive overload of all these ideas. For example, I had to name the symbols consecutively, like A, B, C. So there's a kind of a temporal order in the symbols, in which the symbols that appear first have initial letters. I had to find a way to put an archetypal case and the general case side to side. They have the same shape. I had to find good conventions for fonts and types. I had to choose good meanings for what it means, for what are vertical arrows, what are horizontal arrows, and so on. What is above without an arrow. So, how much detail should we include in our technical explanations? Well, there are many measures for cognitive load or cognitive overload. For example, I asked many technical questions on the Maxima mailing list that got answers that included snippets and names of Lisp functions, Common Lisp, because Maxima is written in Common Lisp, and I liked that. And I asked some technical questions on the org mailing list and on the hyperbole mailing list, and usually I got answers that avoided technical details. Note that I chose the term avoided to denote frustration. By the way, if one of my students panics on this part here, after setting the user and password, you will get a Unix prompt. If the student panics on this and does not know what to ask and just gives up, then plonk. So I was talking a lot about plonking people, and what's left after plonking many people? Well, several kinds of beginners that I want to interact with. Note that kinds is plural. Also, I get a definition for the term beginners, thinking books that, like technical books that start with this book is written for the persons of the type such and such, or maybe several definitions for the term beginners. Also, a metric that lets me choose between options A, B, and C when I'm trying to write material for my beginners. For example, here again, should I explain what is a Unix prompt? No. Why no? Well, let me use another example. This one I took from a discussion on IRC. We were helping a certain beginner that was there, and one person suggested to the beginner to do this. Type meta colon and then this thing here and then enter. And I suggested this instead. Copy this expression to your notes and then type Ctrl-E, Ctrl-X, Ctrl-E. And the mnemonic for Ctrl-E, Ctrl-X, Ctrl-E is Ctrl-Exe for executing. And then, well, for me, the option 1, this option here, is very costly because the person has to type a lot without errors, and then after running that and reading this page here, the way of going back to that page is gone. So the person has to commit lots of information to memory. Either the person learns from this page everything that she needs, or the person learns and memorizes how to go there the next time. And for me, the option 2, this one, put this in your notes and then execute it with Ctrl-Exe, is much better because the person commits information to notes and the person learns a way to return to this node of the manual later. And with this, the person learns another way to use her notes. I have a lot of material about that. See, for example, this page here. There's a link to it in my page for this talk. Also, I live in a place in which people who find my instructions too complex or too boring disappear, either for months or forever. So if I put an instruction, or if I give an instruction that the person cannot understand and the person gives up, I lose the person. Now let me do some things in a weird order. In a normal presentation, this would be the conclusion, and it would be presented at the end. But I will present it now before the technical details. So I was teaching Emacs AV and Maxima for students. Did it work? Well, sort of, but in a weird way. Many students decided to take my test on Emacs AV and Maxima. Let me consider only the 35 students in the 2 last semesters that were able to do what I asked. That was to use a link like this one to go to my notes. They had to go to a specific small program in Maxima, copy that program to their notes, modify it a bit to make it solve a slightly different problem, and then save the new program. So it was most a test on the interface and to test if they knew some very basic things on Maxima. But of these 35 students, only 10 students asked questions on the Telegram group. Mostly they discussed with other students, sometimes live. They would bring their laptops to the university to discuss. They only do that very rarely, but they brought it sometimes. Other times they would discuss with their colleagues on Discord, but I got very little feedback from our usability test. So my experiment failed in the sense that I didn't get the feedback that I expected. I only got a fraction of the feedback that I expected, but I learned lots of things. Well, I got very angry, very frustrated, but I saw that I can't invest a lot of energy on students who, how do I say, won't talk to me. Then I decided to make contact with some schools, secondary schools, and to make a long story short, in one of the schools, I was very well received. The students asked lots of questions, and in the middle of the discussion, we were discussing this little program here that splits the frame into windows and displays the file help in the window at the right. And I showed them my Lisp tutorial that starts with this thing here. And right in its third section, it explains quote. So I had to explain them how we can use quote to pass, to avoid evaluating a program, and we can use quote to pass unevaluated programs as arguments, and quote blew their minds, and I was amazed by the questions, and I saw more clearly that the campus in which I work is a whole, and I need to do more things outside. Now let's see some technical details. What exactly am I teaching to these students? Basically, my old tutorial for EV was this one. It started with a section on installing EV, and then it explained Lisp and how to use Lisp hyperlinks, and then lots of other things. But I'm using this new tutorial here that I'm not announcing in many places because I wanted to test it a lot before making it very public. And it starts with other installation instructions that start with instructions for installing WSL on a machine with Windows, and then installing Debian there, and then after that people have to install Emacs, and then then they have to install AV, and blah blah blah. And I'm also using this map here that I'm reorganizing, so it's going to change a lot in the next days. It has a two-dimensional map here, and it has lots of things that I'm putting in a single place to make it easier to answer questions and to show to the students that I have answers to most common questions, most of the common questions. Remember, my target audience is mostly composed of beginners who have never seen a terminal in their lives and that get bored very quickly. And when they get bored, they disappear. What are my main goals for the first day? I want them to install everything, where everything means WSL on their Windows machines, then Debian, Emacs, EV, lots of Debian packages that they install with this block here. After that, they need to run some Maxima programs and some test blocks and configure Emacs and create a first set of executable nodes. And I consider that after that the person is autonomous. I said that the students learn how to run some Maxima programs. Let me be more precise about that. The first step is something that I call the first for the 5-minute workshop, and it happens in the classroom on my laptop, and I make the students run these. Actually, in the first moment, I run this thing here, and then I ask them to run it themselves. So I type F8 on these three things here. We get a target buffer running Maxima. Then I type F8 several other times here. When I type F8 here, it opens a GNU plot window that I have to close by typing Q. Here again. And that's it. And then I say, now it's your turn. And the students go there, they type F8 3 times, and then they type F8, 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 Q, F8, Q. The second step is similar, is another individual workshop, also just a few minutes long, in which they learn how to access my nodes. My nodes on Maxima are here. I mean, this is the HTMLized version. It starts with the header, then a huge index here, then many blocks like this, well, whatever. And this is a specific block that corresponds to the thing that we run in the first 5-minute workshop. And in this second 5-minute workshop, they run the instructions in this section here. Usually I skip this thing in the first moment, then I explain it to them. And they run something like this, that downloads a copy of my notes on Maxima, puts that copy in a temporary buffer, and they can run the thing here exactly in the same way as before. And they can I also asked them to run my small Maxima programs in other blocks, like this one, for example. If we run this, it calculates the solution of a question that I put in a test 1 or 2 semesters ago. It starts by calculating several integrals, and then it organizes all the solutions in a big matrix like this. I said that at one point the students have to install lots of Debian packages. This happens after they have installed WSL, Debian, then Emacs and EV, and they already know a bit about APH, so they are in this section of the instructions, and they just have to type F8 here several times and watch what happens. After that, we have many options, and I have this map here, and I usually choose a path according to the interests and the questions of the student. And there are many things that can go wrong, so this page also works as a place in which I put all my troubleshooting instructions. And if a student have a question, I can, suppose that the student is talking to me by WhatsApp or Telegram, and the student is saying, okay, I installed the thing such and such, and I tried the thing blah blah, and something went wrong. And I say, okay, can you send me a screenshot or a photo of your screen? And then we can troubleshoot that by using a section of this page here. And this is a work in progress. I'm reorganizing this thing for the 10th time. And the rest of what can happen with these students can't be explained clearly in a video. So I'm going to put all the other stuff in the page of the video, and I'm going to stop the video here. So thanks and bye.